Welcome back everyone. Let's memorize kanjis, kanji o boimasho. Today we'll be covering kanjis from 21 to 30 from Kodansha Kanji Learners course. So let's get straight into it. The first kanji of the day, that is the 21st kanji for us, is an interesting kind of kanji because it has two meanings, both of which are very different from each other. The first one is a simple meaning, I. You can imagine this is also the tip that the book gives you. So one way to imagine this is to imagine a sideways inverted human eye, something like this, with this being your eyeball. So if you recall what we had done yesterday, there are no circular or oval kinds of shapes. Most of them will be represented by some form of squares. So that's basically it. This is how the eye is being represented, with the eyeball and the iris basically being this midsection, and it has just been made into a square. So that's one way of memorizing it. The other meaning, of course, the other meaning is item, which is to say subdivision. Or another meaning that the book gives, order. So this is slightly more easy to visualize. Just imagine a list with several items in it like so, except you just represent it with 3 of them. So that's basically it. It's a list. So this is one way of memorizing how this means both I as well as item. So I'm just going to erase this mnemonic for the sake of space. And let's get into the onin kunyomis for this. The kunyomi, one of them is me. Then you have me, where me becomes the suffix, and then you have one more where ma is used, and ma is the prefix to some words. The onyomis are moku and boku. Let me just rewrite that more. Came out a little stranger than usual. Actually, it's still not right. Yeah, moku and boku. Now let's have a look at some words. If you remember how most of the kanjis which began with the kanji for 1 were read, most of the time it took up the kun reading of hito. It's the same case here, where it is going to be read as hitome. There is an alternative onyomi reading present for this, which is ichimoku. It can also be read as ichimoku, and this means a look or a glance. Okay, let's have a look at another word. So this is hitome. Again, somewhat exceptional because both are kanjis and they are still using the kunyomis and not the onyomis. Oops. Yeah. So this hitome means attention. Or public notice. There isn't much that I have to say about this. Now let's have a look at another one. So this is going to be read as Mitsuki, which is in keeping with our rule. And metsuki means look or expression. Again, pretty straightforward. And these are all the meaning that is carried in all of these examples is the meaning of eye or something having to do with eyes or seeing. Now let's have a look at some examples of the second meaning where it means item, subdivision or order. So for example, so this is going to be read as Gojunin me, which means the 50th person. So this is how this word is going to be used, wherein you want to specifically talk about a particular object in a series or a particular object in a list or a particular person in a sequence. So when you want to say the 6th something or the 5th something or the 31st something, the what we write in English as, so for example, if I write third, this RD, this superscript RD, that is what you're representing with me. That is the purpose that this kanji serves. So when you talk about 50th, for example, we write 50th. So here it will be just like this, except you will remove the kanji for person. So it will be goju me. Goju me. So that's how that functions. And here just like you can see 50th person. So let's take another example. It works with pretty much anything. So here, if you remember, we will read the first part as muika and the second part is me. So this is the 6th day. The 6th day. Okay, pretty straightforward, nothing too confusing. So let's move on to the next one. So I hope if any one of you actually spent some time to go through that overly long introduction video, you will already have an idea as to what this particular kanji means. This kanji stands for river. River. It's pretty easy to visualize this. So I will choose red. You can think of the stroke on the left and the stroke on the right as being banks of the river. Banks of the river. And the stroke in the middle, this one, is the water in the river. It's pretty obvious once you actually know the meaning of it. There is another alternative way of writing river, so we will look back at this kanji when we do that other kanji, but this one stands for river. It's pretty simple. It's also just a 3-stroke kanji. Even if you cannot remember the mnemonic, I think it should be easy enough to memorize otherwise as well. Now quickly let's have a look at the on and kunyomi. There's only one of each, so the onyomi is kawa. The kunyomi is kawa and the onyomi is sen. Now we have been introduced to something interesting for those who remember. We did another kanji yesterday. Bonus points to those who can actually recognize what this kanji is. This is the kanji for 1,000. In case you remember, the onyomi for this kanji was also sen. Now some of you may think, why is it that more than one kanji have the same onyomi? Well, the answer is to say because that's how the system works, but that's really not a very reassuring answer, unfortunately. But just try to remember this, that there are many kanjis with the same onyomi readings. There are actually several ways of writing the same word, as in several kanjis to express the same kunyomi also. But you will see more often than not that there will be a greater number of kanjis with the same on reading than the same kun reading. So yes, this is a point of confusion for many. It was for me when I started off. So just please keep this in mind. Do not get confused. Do not think that you've already covered one kanji with the reading of sen, so therefore this cannot be sen. That's not how this works. Okay. Now let's move on to some words. So this is unfortunately so for those of you who have been putting in your katakana practice, this of course means the Volga River. The Volga River being a river in Russia, and you would read it as Burga Kawa. Burga Kawa. Now then, let's have a look at the next word. This will be read as Kawaberi. Kawaberi, which means riverbank. There is another word for riverbank which we will do at a later point of time because that has its own kanji. Now let's have a look at some combinations of kanji. Now here you will again use the kun readings and not the on readings. So this will be read as Kawaguchi. Let me rewrite that, it's not come out very well. Kawaguchi. Kawaguchi can both be the name Kawaguchi. There is also a lake very close to Mount Fuji by the name of Kawaguchi. So yeah, it's a name, it's a proper noun. It also means mouth of a river. Also means mouth of a river. So please keep that in mind. And let's do another name. So this is Kawata or Kawada. Kawada. Okay, actually let me write it on the side because we have already entered into the next slide somewhat. So this is Kawata or Kawada. And these are both names. Okay, these are some examples for this kanji. Excuse me. Excuse me. Okay, so let's move on to the next kanji. Now this is again one of the kanjis which will be used very often and it shows up very often, but it does not resemble the object that it is supposed to represent. The object that this is supposed to represent is the moon. It has another meaning of month, but again the concept of the month itself is very closely tied to the moon, so you could just remember the other meaning even with moon. In case you're curious, a month is supposed to be the entire completion of one phase of the moon, as in from one new moon day to the next new moon day. That entire cycle is supposed to be a month. So again, very closely connected to the moon. So let's have a look at the on and kunyomi. The kunyomi is tsuki and the onyomi is getsu and gatsu. Getsu and gatsu. Now let's quickly have a look at some words. So this is going to be read as ichigatsu, which means January. This again can also be read as hitotsuki, in which case it means 1 month. So this is very similar to reading this kanji as ichinichi, in which case it means 1 day, or if you read it as tsuitachi, it meaning the first day of a month. So very similar here, depending on the reading, it can be January or it can be 1 month. So both readings, ichigatsu and hitotsuki, both of them are valid, and depending on context, the meaning will also change. Now let's have a look at a few more words. Or actually, before we do that, let's have a look at how they write months in Japanese. So just now we have seen January to be ichigatsu. Similarly, we will have this, which will be nigatsu. I'm pretty sure what nigatsu, I'm pretty sure all of you know what nigatsu is. Let's have a look at the next one. This is sangatsu. Now the next one is the interesting one. You will not read this as yongatsu. Yongatsu is wrong. This is one of the few places where the actual shi pronunciation of the kanji is retained, and you will call it shigatsu. So just a note, yongatsu or yogatsu is wrong. It's wrong, okay? Just bear that in mind. It is going to be read as shigatsu. And let's so on basically. So you have gogatsu, rokugatsu, shichigatsu, hachigatsu. Again, when it comes to this, it is not kyugatsu, it is kugatsu. Kugatsu. 10月, 11月, 12月. That's how that goes. Pretty simple, not too difficult. I'm just going to okay, I'll just leave it be for now. Fine, let me not erase it. Now let's see how we can write dates now that we know how to write both days and months. So for example, I hope you can tell the date even if you don't know how to read it exactly. The date is of course 8th of March. 8th of March, and you will read this as Sangatsu yoka. Sangatsu yoka. Okay. Now one very interesting combination reading is this. So this means day of a month or a particular date. So this date, usually when within the same year, you will read this as gappi. So in case you're curious, gatsu being the onyomi, but he being the kunyomi of the second kanji. So that's a combination reading. This is read as gappi. There is another way of reading this. The other way of reading this is tsukihi, which means time or days. The Gappi one is something I have come across more commonly than not. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Now here I have not written the stroke order because both of the component kanjis, so in case it wasn't clear, I am referring to this as one component and the other one as the other component. For those of us who have the book, these components have been called as graphemes. Graphemes. So that's what the word grapheme means. They're just talking about a component of the entire kanji. Now, because we have done the strokes of each of these graphemes, the overall stroke order is just writing the strokes of the first one, that is the sun kanji in its order, and then the moon kanji in its order, and then that will be the stroke order for the overall kanji, which is why I did not write it all over again. Now, this kanji, let's have a look at the mnemonic first and see if we can come to the meaning of it. So let's imagine having both the sun and the moon in the sky at the same time. In the sky simultaneously. Just imagine if you can see both the sun and the moon side by side in the sky. What do you imagine that will look like? What do you imagine that will look like? In one word, it will look bright. So that is one of the meanings of this word. Now this word also carries the meaning of cheerful. Cheerful. And a third meaning is clear. Because imagine what the sky would be like if you had that kind of light. Wouldn't everything be very clear? If you can see both the sun and the moon simultaneously, it means that you don't have any clouds in the sky. So it has to be a clear sky in order for you to be able to see it. So the two meanings that this visualization of having the sun and the moon simultaneously in the sky, the two meanings that it gives us is bright and clear. So I hope you can remember that. Now let's have a look at the on and kunyomis. This has a bunch of kunyomis, quite a few of them. Don't worry, you don't have to remember all of them. You just need to be able to relate these words back to the kanji or the kanji back to these meanings. That's it. Nobody will test your knowledge of all kunyomis, and much of the kunyomi memorization will happen as you start using the language regularly. You cannot just hope to memorize them bookishly and be able to retain all of that information for extended periods of time. So now let's have a look at the kunyomis. Just a minute. So akarui, akari, akarumu, akaramu, akiraka, akeru, ake. So here this ake is a suffix. It's a suffix. Then you have aku. Then you have Akuru. Then you have akasu. Quite a lot of kunyomis. You will not be expected to memorize all of them. So there's that. And let's quickly have a look at the onyomis for it. It's very simple. Mei, myo, mei and myo. Okay. Now let's have a look at some words. There's quite a few words, so I may end up erasing some details here. You can always pause and take down everything, or you can refer to the book in case it's needed, or you can refer to some other websites like jisho.org, which is a very good dictionary website. You can use it to read all the available kunyomis of it. So let's have a look at some of the words. So let's see if you can guess the meaning. It means bright moon. Clearly, right? A bright moon. So when is the moon at its brightest? It means it's on a full moon. It's on a full moon night. So a bright moon also means full moon, or it can also mean a harvest moon. Of course, harvest moon showing up in, I imagine, literary works rather than regular conversation. So that's what that means. Actually, I'll have to erase it already, so let me erase it. I'll erase the mnemonic first, and I will rewrite this first word up there. Bright moon, full moon, harvest moon, and this is read as meigetsu. Meigetsu. Okay, let's have a look at another way of writing. This is how you would write the kunyomi of it with the kanji. This, of course, being akadui. Okay, I'm not going to rewrite the meaning. Oops, hold on. So this will be read as akirakana. Akirakana, which means clear, distinct, apparent. And this is an adjective, a na adjective. And similarly, you can have a derivative of this. Of course, I'm not going to write the meaning, I'm just going to mention it here because it comes up quite a few times in conversation. Akirakani, which means clearly or apparently or distinctly, you know, very similar to the word akirakana. Now this is an interesting kind of kanji. This is not a bright day. This means tomorrow. Unfortunately, I cannot give you a very good way of memorizing this. I had to memorize it the hard way. I cannot think of any shortcuts, but if you can think of it, please do share it with me in the comments. This is read as asu. And of course, the more common and easy to remember word being ashita. Ashita is what most people are taught when they're doing the JLPT study. There is one more. Now this means the following day. The following day. And this we will read it as akuruhi. Akuruhi. The following day. Now just a writing tip, in case you've noticed how I actually had to let me use a different color to show you. So please notice that this kanji here for moon and this kanji here for bright approximately take up the same amount of space, which is why you need to write it proportionately bigger or smaller. That is, you need to either scale down the kanji or scale up the kanji in proportion to all the other kanjis that have been written there. This is because all kanjis are supposed to occupy the same amount of space. So you cannot have one kanji be really big. That is to say, you cannot have an example where you're writing this kanji as this big and then the moon itself, that is the second kanji here, is small. So this is an awkward way of writing. This is considered not very clear or not a good way of writing, which is why I had to scale up the other kanji. So please bear that in mind. I'm really sorry for the shortage of space. I didn't think I would take up the entire space and have to erase the mnemonic anyway. But anyway, okay, I'll try to be more careful next time. But for now, let's move on to the next kanji. Now this is an interesting kind of kanji. The stroke order is a little, let me tell you how I have condensed it here. So we already know the stroke order for this part. So we will write this part. Then I have given you the stroke order of one of these two, which is up there. You just have to repeat it, and then you have the stroke order of this. So I will, for now I will name this as 1, this is 2, this is 3, and this is 4. That is the order in which you will start drawing the kanji. First you will draw the sun, then you will draw the katakana yo. The katakana yo in the same way as you write the katakana yo. I have shown you the stroke order. Then you will write this fourth part, which is again described here. So this entire, this entire thing is one kanji. So please remember to scale up or scale down the respective graphemes to adjust and make the kanji look like one whole unit. The meaning of this kanji is day of the week. Day of the week. So in case you've already done the days of the week, we will see how to write a few words. They do show up as examples, but for now we will just do 2 examples because we have only done 2 of the kanjis that are required to show you the days of the week. This does not have any kunyomi, it only has onyomi, and the onyomi is very conveniently yo. It's very easy to remember because this katakana yo and the small part in the kanji itself, the second and third part, resemble each other very closely, so the reading is very obvious. Even though the kanji is really complicated, it expresses something that is kind of abstract and not easily expressed in a written manner. Even then, it's quite easy to remember how to pronounce the kanji because of the similarity with the katakana reading it has. You will read it as yo or yo. Okay. Now then, let's have a look at some of the words. We will do the mnemonic slightly later. So one word is, I imagine this is a little difficult. So this, okay, even before this, okay, let me put it this way. So this will be read as yobi. yobi. So this is something like saying day. So this is the standard suffix you will have whenever you want to express a particular day of the week. So for example, in English we have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday and so on. So the day part, that is the common suffix for each of those words. Similarly, this yobi is going to be the common suffix for all of the days of the week in Japanese. Now let's have a look at one of the days of the week that we can do. Let's see if you can guess the meaning of it. So this, I hope you can guess it. This first kanji here, it stands for both day as well as sun. So this is Sunday. This is Sunday. And it will be read as Nichiyobi. Nichiyobi. Now let's have a look at another one. That's not a very good. I think I got the stroke order wrong, so let me rewrite that part. This of course standing for Monday, because Mondays are named after the moon. So the Sunday is named after the sun, Monday is named after the moon, and so on. We'll see what the other days of the week are named for. If you have any interest in astrology, you'll be able to quickly connect these because each of the days is actually connected to a particular planet in the solar system. So this is Monday. We will be reading this as Getsuyobi. Getsuyobi. And now when you want to say hold on, I'll write it on the side because it's a little towards the bottom and it's a little difficult for me to write. This will be read as Shichiyo. Shichiyo. And this means seven days of the week. Please bear in mind that there are several other examples that we can do for this. But for now, because we have not covered the other kanjis, we will not be doing it. Okay. There is an interesting kind of mnemonic that is given in the book, which I said we would be covering. So imagine, okay, actually I will not do the mnemonic because the mnemonic itself is quite complicated. Please remember the other tip that I gave you, that the kanji itself, this kanji here resembles the katakana yo. So this is your tip. This is your tip. If you remember your katakana yo, you will be able to guess the meaning as yo. It's just that you need to add an u in the end. But that's about it. Otherwise, there are very few kanjis which resemble this one. In my experience, there are a few, but you will be able to see the differences. We will cover some similar looking kanjis, and at that point you will be clear on where the difference lies. So until then, we will not be discussing this further. Now this is one more kanji which we had done in the introduction video. So I will quickly cover the mnemonic and see if you can remember. So let's imagine I hope it looks like fire, or maybe let me redo that with more colors. Maybe it will be easy to understand if I do that. I'm not sure if that's conveying the idea of fire, but that's what that's supposed to be. So if you look at this, I will draw the kanji with a contrasting color. I will use this blue, and I will use a slightly thicker brush to show you the strokes. So let's say this is one set of flames, then there is another set of flames, then this is another set of flames which is continuing into the wood, and then this is the other part which is continuing into the wood. So this is basically how that kanji has been formed. So that's fire. I hope you can see fire now. So just imagine the two individual strokes which are not connected to be the flames, and the one in the middle which continues, which basically looks like the person, is the flame continuing into the wood that is forming the fuel for the fire. So that's fire basically. Really sorry for the bad drawing, or if it was a good drawing, well, I guess I got lucky. So the meaning, yeah, the meaning is fire, right? It only has this one meaning. There are I think 2 or 3 kunyomis. The first one being he, standalone he. Then you have be, which is a suffix, and then you have a prefix ho, and there is only one onyomi for this, and that is ka. That's ka. So it's pretty obvious now, or rather, if the drawing was good, I think it's pretty obvious how this can be recognized as fire. Now let's have a look at some of the words. So as I was saying just a few minutes ago, the days of the week are named after some planets in the solar system, and each of those planets is associated with specific elements. Now again, if you're interested in that sort of thing, in astrology, or in Chinese astrology or Japanese astrology, the traditional one, then you will come across these associations of specific planets with specific elements, or even if you look at the ancient Greek pantheon and their association with planets and their association with respective elements, you will know how this works. So this fire is supposed to be the element of Mars, and Mars is of course the planet for which we have named the second day of the week Tuesday. So this is how we will write that. That's Tuesday, and you will read it as Kayobi. Kayobi. Okay. Now let's have a look at some more words. Now what could this be? You will read this as Kako, the onyomis of both, or you could also read it with the kunyomis of both as Higuchi, which means crater. I mean, what could be the mouth of fire? It's something like a hole that's emitting fire, and a crater is one such example. That's what it is. It's a crater. So here, let me rewrite that. So here you will read it as, hold on, Kako. So this is crater, and the other reading, Higuchi, means the cause of a fire. So again, much like your Ichinichi Tsuitachi debacle, depending on the context, the reading will change, and depending on the reading, the meaning will change. So if it is Kako, it's crater. If it is Higuchi, it is cause of fire. Now let's have a look at another kanji which is bound to confuse you. I hope you're confused yet. So this is kuchibi. Kuchibi. So this is a fuse, or this is a pilot burner, or this can be the cause of a war, etc. Okay, and then you have this kaden, which stands for slash and burn agriculture. I think kaden and kayobi are rather straightforward. Kako or higuchi and kuchibi are a little bit confusing. But those are again the kinds of words that you will not encounter very frequently. But in case you do, just remember that if the fire is coming first, it means either crater or it could mean the cause of a fire. But whereas if the mouth is coming first, it means it's a fuse. So just think of it in terms of which is taking priority. So if it is the mouth, which is, if you treat it as the point of entry, then that means fuse, and if not, then it has the other two meanings that are associated with it. So that is one way of remembering it, but I don't expect these to be encountered very commonly. Okay, so moving on. Now this is again another kanji that I had covered as a part of the introduction video, I think, and this kanji stands for water. This kanji stands for water. Now an interesting way of remembering this, the mnemonic that the book also gives, is if you look at this kanji which we did just a while back, the kanji of river, and if you just basically narrowed the banks of the river to make a very narrow kind of passage for water, it's going to splash out. So if you pinch the sides of the river, the water is going to splash out. That's basically it. So this part and this part are the banks of the river which have been squeezed, and this is the water splashing out. So that's the mnemonic given in the book. You can use it. Personally, I find that a little more confusing to memorize, but again, to each their own. Now let's have a look at the on and kunyomi. The kunyomi is mizu, or it can also be mizu used as a prefix. The onyomi is very simple, sui. Sui. Now let's have a look at days. Again, there is a day which is named for I imagine it's Mercury. I think Mercury is associated with water. I think I screwed up the stroke order. Let me do that again. The stroke orders can be a little difficult. I am actually following the stroke order so that you guys can also benefit from it. Otherwise, all that matters is that you basically draw the kanji. Everything else is secondary. Or if you don't have to type it, you just need to be able to recognize it. So, stroke orders don't really matter much. So this is going to be read as suiyobi. Suiyobi. This means Wednesday. Then you have an interesting kanji. This means, or rather, you will read it as himizu, and the meaning is as opposite as fire and water. As fire and water. Let's have a look at some more examples. This is Mizuguchi, which means nozzle or spout. Again, the mouth from which you have a lot of water coming out. So that's like a spout or a nozzle. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. And then let's have a look at a few more. This is Suiden, which interestingly is again a paddy field or a rice field. I mean, if you think about it, if you've actually seen any paddy fields in your life, you would know that most of the time there will be water in them. So it's pretty easy to remember that way as well. Now, an interesting way of mentioning the days is this. This will be pronounced as Gesui, which means Mondays and Wednesdays. That's what that means. Mondays and Wednesdays. Gesui, not Getsui, it's Gesui. Please remember that there is a small tsu over there. Okay, moving on. Again, another kanji which we have already seen in the introduction video, if you actually saw the introduction video. So let's have a look at that again. So let's say this is your ground. Okay, let me use a fatter brush. Let me just erase that for a bit. Let's say this is the ground, and let's see, you have a tree like so. It has its roots like so, and then it has, like several leaves. Like so. So now, okay, I'll go back to using the white brush to show you how this kanji shows up, and a slightly thinner one. So this is the ground, this is the basic body of the tree, these are the roots. So now you see how this kanji is basically the same as this. That's how you have tree. Okay, so I hope it's understood what this kanji means. It means tree. It can also mean wood or timber. Let's have a look at the onen kunyomis. So this is ki, or it can be read as ko as a prefix, and then you have moku, and then you have boku and boku. Now, in case you remember, we did another kanji with the same readings, moku and boku, today itself, that being this kanji, the kanji for I or item. So here again, it just goes to show you that more than one kanji can have the same onyomi, even though they mean completely different things and have completely different kunyomis. Now, that was just a side note, just a reminder. And now we can get straight into the words. This will be read as mokuyobi, which means Thursday. Now Thursday is named for Jupiter. I don't know the association with wood, but please bear this association in mind, that Thursday and Jupiter are connected. It's not a very important detail, but you will come to see once we do those kanjis later on. Okay. Now let's have an example of how they write dates. So this is of course representing the 7th of January, and the parenthetical note is that it was a Thursday, or it is a Thursday, or that it will be a Thursday, something like that. This is how they write it. So this is what that means. It's not really something that is vocalized, it is just something that is for people to be able to see and understand. So it's up to you how you want to read this. There's no prescribed way of reading. I think this was also pretty simple. You're referring to Tuesdays and Thursdays. Tuesdays plus Thursdays. That's what that means. Now, an interesting one. Now, how do you suppose they read this, right? They read this as kime or mokume, in which case they're talking about tree items. Now what do you imagine tree items to be? They're actually talking about the grain of the wood. So they're talking about the grain of the wood. In case you're wondering what the grain of the wood means, if you cut a tree, if say you've cut a tree, this is what a tree looks like when you've cut it. It will have all these little concentric circles once you cut open the tree. So this is what is referred to as the grain of the tree. This is the grain of the tree. So this is what they're referring to, and it is, oops, can't seem to reduce the size. Okay, got it. So this is what it means when they say mokume or kime. Let's see how. So what do you suppose this means? This means one tree. One tree. Pretty straightforward how that works out. And you will read this as ichi boku. Ichi boku, the other reading for tree. Okay, let's move on to the next kanji. We're just 2 more kanjis away from ending today's session. Hopefully it's been shorter. Now this kanji had a bit of a long stroke order, but it's not too difficult, and this is again one of the very basic kanjis that you will have to learn. So it's only going to get easier and easier to recognize this kanji, even if it's a little bit of a pain to write down. Now let's see what this means. This means metal, it means gold, and it means money. It means all those 3 things. Now how do you want to imagine this? Let's have a look at the mnemonic. Now imagine that there are stacks and stacks and stacks of gold bars that have been piled on top of each other like this. No, let's say these are bars of gold that have been piled on top of each other. And to draw a bit of shine, so that's basically what that is, gold shines if you keep it somewhere. So this is that shine that the gold has, and let's say this has all been kept under a shed. like an asbestos sheet, shed. And this. So let's just imagine that. Okay. A giant pile of gold under a roof. This is very similar to what that is. You know, this the strokes on top being this roof. Okay, let me use a fatter pencil. These two, and then you have the gold, which is 1 and 2, and this is basically the pile, and then you have the shine, then you have the base of it. You see how that works out? So that's how you can remember that this is what gold means, or this is the kanji for gold. This is also the mnemonic that the book suggests. It's a pretty interesting mnemonic. I personally did not require it, but in case you do, please remember that kind of a picture, and you will be able to come to understand what that means. Let's quickly have a look at the on and kunyomis. The kunyomis, oops, kane, gane, and kana. I hope I don't have to explain the prefix suffix mark here. It's been repeated quite a few number of times, so I'm just going to skip over it. The first onyomi is kin and the other one is kon. Depending on where you come across it, you will have either kin or kon in some variation, including in names, as in place names. So we'll cover a few examples now that we are done with the on and kunyomis. So onward, let's have a look at the first word. This is kinyobi. Kinyobi being Friday. I think Fridays are associated with Venus. I'm not completely sure about that, but in any case, this is known as Friday. Now, the next one. This is Kichigane. So this is what we'll take the first meaning, metal clasp or metal cap or metal snap. You know, something to hold things in place, prevent them from moving. This, of course, the second part that is written in katakana is to be read as medaru. For those of you who have been putting in your katakana practice, medaru is of course medal, and because we are talking about gold here, so this of course means gold medal. Pretty obvious, not too difficult. When talking about money, they usually don't just say kane. I mean, they do sometimes, but usually they will add the respectful o in front of it as a prefix, and it will be read as okane. Okane. Okay, and one sample name I will give you. So this also happens to be the name of one of my colleagues. This will be read as Kaneda. For those of you who have watched the 1988 cult classic Akira, there is of course the protagonist who is also named as Kaneda. So this is how you would write that Kaneda's name. This is Kaneda. In case anyone is curious, Akira is a very good movie. Definitely not recommended for children. Please watch it only if you're above 18 because it has some really disturbing imagery. But in any case, if you're old enough, please do give it a watch. It's pretty good. It's really something. Okay, so moving on to the last kanji of the day. This kanji, let's have a look at the mnemonic first. So let's imagine that this is the ground. Okay, I'll use a fatter brush. Let's imagine that this is the ground, and then let's imagine that something is sprouting from the ground like so, and there's like leaves and stuff, and there's like a leaf up there and some stuff over there, etc, etc. So here, okay, it's not a very good drawing, so let me redo that. Okay, this is the ground. Let's say you have something like this, then you have it like this, like this, like this. And let's say leaves. No, it's something like this. So where do you imagine a tree or a plant to sprout from? You of course expect it to sprout it from the ground. So that's what this kanji is. This kanji represents the ground, or the earth, you could call it, the soil, land, soil or land. So this kanji is basically to be visualized as that, a plant sprouting from the ground. This is the mnemonic given in the book, of course. I personally memorized it the hard way. I found that to be easier. Now let's have a look at the on and kunyomis. The kunyomi is tsuji, and the onyomis are do and to. So as I said, even though the meaning of the kanji given here is soil and land, it extends to all associated things like the ground, the earth, like earth, ground, etc. These shades of meaning are conveyed by this kanji. Now let's have a look at some words. This will be read as, doyobi, which is Saturday, which completes all the days of the week now. Now another interesting, so we just saw doyobi, then what is this supposed to be? This, if you remember the other similar kanjis that we did, this means Saturday and Sunday, and it will be read as donichi. Okay, the next kanji, this will be read as doboku, and it's a little difficult to grasp the meaning of this. This is supposed to mean engineering works. Engineering works. It's a little complicated, but if you think of trees as things that uh, appear above the ground, and if you think of the earth itself appearing above the ground, then it's probably talking about a house or something like that, that's made with bricks, again a lot of mud and cement, things that come from the ground. So an earth tree can be thought of as a building, and a building is essentially an engineering work. It's a bit of a complicated way of thinking about it, I suppose, but if you can remember it, fine. Just remember it as engineering works. Let's have a look at the next kanji. Now this, literally this means earth person, but think about it as a person who belongs to that particular part of the planet, or that particular part of land. So it's, or if I had to put it in a bit more flowery language, let's think of it as people of the land. People of the land. So when you say people of the land, it actually means aborigines. Aborigines. So that's what that means, and you will read it as dojin. You will read it as dojin. Let's have a look at one more. This will be read as tsuchi ijiri, which means fiddling with the dirt. Fiddling with dirt, or as the book says, puttering in the garden. For some reason I feel like this is an extremely British way of putting it. Puttering in the garden. Don't you putter in the garden? Imagine a British person saying that. Anyway, this ijiri is actually a kanji in itself. I suppose this is ijiru, basically meaning to tamper with, or yeah, that's basically one of the meanings of that word, ijiru, meaning to tamper. So tsuchi ijiri is where you're tampering with the soil, or basically fiddling with the dirt. It's a pretty obvious kind of meaning. There are some cases where even though kanjis exist for particular words, the kanjis will not be used, and instead those words will be written with the respective hiragana. I am not sure if this is such a case, and that is why it is written as ijiri in hiragana. But in case this word shows up again when we do the ijiru kanji, at that time I will write it down again, and in the meantime I will check if it is possible to write tsuchi ijiri with the kanji of both tsuchi and ijiru. So that's it for today. We have completed our 30 kanji mark. I hope you're revising every day. Things are only going to get way more complicated from this point. At least for now, you can visualize most of the kanjis. Going forward, that visualization is going to not happen at all. You're going to have to use some complicated logic to memorize the kanji, to guess the meaning of those things. So please keep revising. Please make it a point to make it a habit to keep revising kanji, so that later on, when things actually become really difficult, you won't struggle with that. So anyway, we are done with 30 kanjis for now. We have another 2270 left. Let's continue on. Let's push on forward. Thanks again, and see you next time. Bye bye.